To our veterans, thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And to President Biden, thank you for finally helping this country to address the needs of our brave veterans who for too long suffered with chronic illness and died from exposure to the burn pits that they were exposed to during their time of service. The PACT Act is just one of countless achievements our president has achieved in the last several years, creating over 13 million jobs, passing legislation to reduce the cost of prescription drugs, and getting inflation under control. I can't think of a more capable, a more prepared, or a better person to be fighting for us and leading our nation. Thank you, President Biden, for being here with us in Salt Lake City, and thank you for having me here today.
Please welcome Utah Governor Spencer Cox.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to be here at this facility with all of you. We so appreciate your attendance today. Mayor, thank you for your remarks, and thank you for hosting us here in the capital city. On behalf of the 3.3 million Utahns in our great state, we welcome President Biden to the Beehive State. Anytime we get the opportunity to have a president of either party in our state, we appreciate this amazing opportunity that we have to collaborate, to work closely together, to push back on policies with which we disagree, and to find areas of common ground. And I just want to reiterate that last part a little bit. There has been some question over whether or not the governor of the state of Utah would welcome the president of a different party. I think it's insane that we are having those conversations in our country today. I so appreciate my blue state partners, governors who welcomed President Trump, and we welcome President Biden here. We honor this office of the presidency. When the president succeeds, America succeeds, and we want to find ways to work together. We also do want to push back when we disagree, and I think we've gotten really good at that part. But we need to remember the other part of that equation that makes us so proud to be Americans. Certainly, there is one thing that we all unequivocally agree on, and that is a deep admiration and gratitude for the veterans among us. Thank you to the brave women and men we have visited with over the past few days, those who have served our country, worn the uniform of our country, sacrificed their very lives, their health, and their families to make our country the special place that it is today. We honor you. Thank you for your service. Now, we have about 138,000 military veterans in Utah, and not only have they already sacrificed for our country, but they continue serving in our state in so many important and powerful ways. We estimate that they, and I don't like to get always into the money side of things, but I think it's important to know that they bring about $3 billion in economic impact to our state. It's how important veterans are in what we're trying to accomplish here. We are grateful to Congress and the President for recognizing their important service and the passage of the PACT Act, which addresses the burn pit exposure during the Gulf War, the Kosovo War, Afghanistan, and Iraq, as well as those exposed and injured by toxins in the water at Camp Lejeune. Now, more than 3,000 Utah veterans have already submitted claims related to the PACT Act, and approximately 2,800 of those have already been completed, totaling almost $12 million in retroactive payments. They have been processed fairly quickly in less than 4 months, and as government goes, that's very quickly. Thank you. I want to give a special shout out to our Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, who have helped almost 4,000 veterans file claims within the past year of all different types. I truly applaud your efforts, and I want to recognize the many organizations and individuals in Utah who work together to serve our military members, veterans, and their families. We have incredible partnerships with the VA, the Department of Labor, the Department of Defense, our state legislature, local officials, our military bases, academic institutions, our business community, and veterans and military organizations, some of whom are here with us today. One thing is true. Everywhere I go, as I talk to our veterans and those who are involved in the Department of Defense right now, Utah is known as a patriotic state. We care deeply about the men and women in uniform who serve here, who are serving now, and who've served before. And I'm proud to be the governor of a great state who cares about our veterans. Now, we encourage veterans and families throughout Utah to connect with Veterans Service Office at our department or with other veterans organizations to look into assisting and filing claims. Now, we know that the PACT Act has special meaning to President Biden, given his late son Beau's service and sacrifice. Mr. President, we thank you for the sacrifice of you and your family, and we're grateful to have you here honoring veterans in the Beehive State. Thank you so much.
Please welcome U.S. Army veteran Erica Smith.
Good morning. My name is Erica Smith, and at 17, I became a soldier. In my 7-year career as a Black Hawk crew chief, I worked with many phenomenal people, and I deployed to Iraq in 2019. On the flights overseas, we were constantly watching for threats, but we didn't know about the silent threats we saw on a regular basis. Ponds of oil lit on fire, waste and garbage being burned, and the fuel and chemicals used on the aircraft. In 2022, during a spinal scan for a separate injury, a mass was discovered on my right kidney. I was just 23 with no family history of cancer. I ate right, I worked out, and I never smoked. Nevertheless, it was cancer, and it was growing fast. Shortly after, a friend from deployment let me know he had cancer in his kidney as well. I filed a claim with the VA immediately. Thankfully, the PACT Act reduced my paperwork burden, and it covered my illness. By the time I had my kidney removed in October of 2022, I had already begun receiving increased benefits that helped me buy my first house. I'm so grateful for the PACT Act, and I encourage other veterans to take advantage of the benefits. The military gave me the courage to take risks, and the PACT Act gave me the stability to endure no matter the outcome. Now, it's my honor to introduce the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Please, take a seat if you have one. Sarge, thank you for that introduction. You know, it's important for two reasons. One, I have been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 38 times, and I don't think most people know, this audience may know, how many women we have in combat. How many women are not only doing their part, but doing jobs that most people didn't think women would do or could do. And the Sarge is an example of just that. You know, Black Hawk helicopter is, anyway, I won't go into it all, but the point is that, you know, Sarge, what happened to you has happened to thousands of people. Governor and I talked about that earlier, the Governor and I, about what we're doing here. You know, you and your fellow veterans are the heart, the soul, and the very spine and sinew of this generation. I mean, that's a fact. You know, only 1% of you volunteer to protect all of us. That's what it is. And it's all volunteer. And I want to thank Dr. Angela Williams and the great team here at Salt Lake City VA for hosting us, for taking care of our heroes. Mayor Mendenhall, thank you for the passport into the city. I appreciate that opportunity. And Governor Spencer Cox, thank you for your hospitality, but much more importantly, thank you for taking care of our veterans and for bringing along your beautiful family. And by the way, you know, years ago, this is a little ad lib here, but years ago when John Kerry was the nominee for president of the Democratic Party, he talked with me about the possibility of being vice president, and on his ticket, and I wasn't. We're old friends. I said no, I didn't want to be vice president. But had I known that as vice president I get Secret Service, and had I known that meant my daughters had Secret Service and my granddaughters, I would have fought even harder for him at the time. And now. I have a bunch of grandchildren. They all have Secret Service, and my daughter has Secret Service, and you know, it's just wonderful. I'm not sure what they think about it, but it's just wonderful. Anyway, thank you very, very much. And look, before I begin, I want to say a word about the devastating wildfires that have claimed at least 36 lives in Maui and Hawaii. We have just approved a major disaster declaration for Hawaii, which will get aid into the hands of the people desperately needing help now. They've lost, anyone who's lost a loved one whose home has been damaged or destroyed is going to get help immediately. And I've directed that we surge support to these brave firefighters and first responders and emergency personnel working round the clock there, risking their lives. I just got off the phone before I got here for a long conversation with Governor Josh Green this morning and let him know I'm going to make sure the state has everything it needs from the federal government to recover. The FEMA Administrator Griswold will be in Maui tomorrow, and I've directed her to streamline any process with requests for help and survivors registered for immediate federal assistance without delay. FEMA is surging disaster assistance personnel on the island, and they're going to help survivors get access to federal assistance. And you know, anybody who wants to know out there where to go if this is televised, that they can go to disasterassistance.gov, disasterassistance.gov, to learn if you're eligible for assistance. And I've ordered all available federal assets on the island, including the U.S. Coast Guard, the Navy 3rd Fleet, and the U.S. Army, to assist local emergency response crews along with the Hawaiian National Guard. We're working as quickly as possible to fight these fires and evacuate residents and tourists. In the meantime, our prayers with the people of Hawaii, but not just our prayers. Every asset we have will be available to them, and they've seen their homes, their business destroyed, and some have lost loved ones, and it's not over yet. But now, for the reason I'm here today. I've said it many times before. When I started saying it 30 years ago, I got criticized occasionally for saying it. I said, we have many obligations as a nation, but we only have one truly sacred obligation, and that's to equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. 1 year ago today, we met that sacred obligation when I signed, after fighting so damn hard for the PACT Act, to sign it into law. And I want to thank all the veterans organizations for helping make that happen, because it matters. The PACT Act is one of the most significant laws ever signed to help veterans exposed to toxic materials and help their families recover, as well as receive compensation. You remember what we mean by burn pits. You know, when we first started using the phrase burn pits, people kind of looked at us. But a burn pit is what you saw, basically the giant burn pit. The first one everybody was aware of was in 9/11 when the buildings came down. Remember all those firemen that died of cancer and how they got covered? Well, when firefighters first responded, that's what happened. Now, the burn pits in Iraq, where we're talking about, and in other countries, Afghanistan, even in parts of throughout the Middle East, they're the size of football fields, up to 100 yards long, 20 yards to 30 yards wide, and 8 to 10 feet deep. And everything you can imagine is thrown into these pits to incinerate them. The wastes of war, tires, poisonous chemicals, jet fuel, and so much more. Toxic smoke, thick with poison, spreads through the air and into the lungs of our troops and their hooches where they live nearby these facilities. I know, I've been there in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've seen them. And you can smell it in the air. You can sometimes see it. And when these troops came home, many of them the fittest and best trained warriors that we ever sent anywhere were exposed to these burn pits. They weren't the same. And thousands of troops had to live in their hooches not far from proximity from these burn pits. The one in Iraq, my son was about 400 yards from one of the burn pits, living there for a year in his hooch. They breathe that toxic material sometimes for months at a time. In the case of my son and his buddies, for an entire year, causing headaches, numbness, dizziness, cancer. This is not about my son, but just an example of how close it was. My son, Bo, was one of those persons. He went the fittest guy in his unit and came home and he came home but died of glioblastoma. It's personal for my family, but it's also personal for so many of you. Secretary of the VA, McDonough, and I just had a long talk. He couldn't be here today, but he can tell you we're determined to address this problem, come hell or high water, and compensate these veterans and their families who have suffered from the consequences of this tragedy. It was part of my unity agenda, as I called it, when I did my first State of the Union, last State of the Union, to try to bring the country together on things I thought we all could agree on. First was beating the opioid epidemic, and we're working like hell on that, tackling mental health crisis, and there is a mental health crisis in America. Supporting our veterans. Look, I delivered that speech in March of last year, and a few months later, in August, with veterans groups making the case and never giving up, the bipartisan PACT Act was on my desk to sign into law. And don't tell me we can't get things done when we work together. Democrats and Republicans work together to get that done. In particular, I want to thank Senator John Tester, the chair of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, and Representative Mark Takano as well, the ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, for their leadership. They never stopped fighting on behalf of the veterans and their families. We learned a horrible lesson after Vietnam, how harmful effects of exposure to Agent Orange took years to manifest themselves in veterans, leaving too many veterans unable to access care when they needed it and deserved it. And they had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that was the cause of their problem, which was difficult to prove in the long term. That's why I supported the Agent Orange Act of 1991, supporting veterans exposed to the harmful substances in Vietnam. Well, I don't want to see that again. The PACT Act means today's veterans and their families won't suffer the same painful, frustrating delays and denials. And here's what the law does. It empowers the Veterans Administration, the VA, to move quicker to determine if a veteran qualifies for the benefits of the law. Benefits like monthly disability compensation and regular toxic exposure screenings. It also means new facilities, new research, and more healthcare workers at VA hospitals. It includes nearly, and one of the veterans raised this to me today, nearly $30 million for new outpatient clinics right here in Salt Lake City, right here. And for families who have suffered the ultimate loss, it means potential access to life insurance, tuition benefits for their surviving family members, home loan assistance, and monthly stipends, which cannot replace one of the breadwinners in their home, but it sure in hell can help. For example, surviving spouse of a veteran who died from toxic illness with 2 children could be eligible for roughly $2,300 a month for the rest of his or her life. I'm proud to announce that over 340,000 veteran survivors are already benefiting the law just 1 year after it was signed, including over 2,000 veterans here in Utah. Veterans are getting the care they deserve in every corner of the country. For example, there's an Army veteran served in Iraq now receiving care for prostate cancer at the VA in Seattle. He heard about the PACT Act and he applied for benefits the day I signed the law. Because he's already a VA patient, he didn't need to submit medical records or get separate exams. His application was approved. He's now received retroactive payments from the date the law was signed. Another Army veteran, now in New Hampshire National Guard with multiple deployments to Iraq and Kuwait, learned that he had that a friend and a soldier she deployed with were diagnosed with breast cancer. Just in case, she decided to get toxic exposure screening free at all veterans enrolled in the VA healthcare. She too was diagnosed with breast cancer. They caught the cancer early and she's currently being treated for it. And she's being granted 100% service-connected eligibility under the PACT Act, tripling her monthly payment benefits. For folks, it matters. This matters. Folks, we have a moral obligation. This goes beyond the financial. We have a moral obligation to respond to this. And I'm here today to spread the word so every veteran or surviving family member knows how to access benefits of this law. Because these conditions have already taken such a toll on so many veterans and their families, I directed the Department of Veterans Affairs to treat all 23 presumptive conditions in this law as applicable immediately, like chronic bronchitis. Chronic bronchitis, asthma, many types of cancer, including any type of reproductive cancer. It's something we've been fighting for a long time. Veterans-era veterans, Vietnam-era veterans are entitled to compensation for hypertension. This is now the law. Let me give you an example of why it matters. The widow of a 28-year Army veteran in Connecticut applied for survivor benefits after her husband died from gastrointestinal cancer. That was before the PACT Act was passed, and her claim was denied. In April of this year, she learned about the PACT Act and reapplied. 1 month later, because of her husband's cancer, she's now presumed to be a service-connected under the PACT Act she claimed was approved. Now she's eligible for survivor's compensation for her son and further his education and the GI Bill. I'm urging veterans from those decades of war in Vietnam and Iraq, Afghanistan, to enroll in the VA health care, to get screened for toxic exposure, and to promptly file your claim. And for those watching this at home, visit va.gov/PACT, P-A-C-T. va.gov, I want to say it again, va.gov/PACT. File a claim or apply for VA health care now, or go to your local VA hospital and reach out to the Veteran Service Organization, like Disabled American Veterans, American Legion, Wounded Warriors Project, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, if you need additional assistance. There's no deadline to submit a claim, but if you want to be eligible to receive retroactive benefits for last year, you have to sign up by Monday. So apply today. The VA will move as quickly as possible to resolve your claim and get the benefits you deserve. We're also taking other important steps to help the nation's veterans and service members. We're helping connect veterans to registered apprentice programs so they can transfer the skills they learned in the military to good-paying jobs here at home now that we're having the largest building boom in 40 years. The VA is launching a Transition Assistance Grant Program for organizations that help veterans and their spouses find jobs when they leave the military. The unemployment rate for veterans has hit an all-time low. It is now at 2.8%. 2.8%. And we're damn proud of that. We've made that a priority since we got in office. This spring, I signed an executive order directing the VA to cut red tape and give veterans who need assistance at home more flexibility in picking who will be their caregiver. Earlier this summer, I went to North Carolina, and I signed an executive order at Fort Liberty. It's called the most comprehensive set of administrative actions in the history of this, to support the economic security of military veterans, their spouses, caregivers, and survivors. Like making it easier for a military spouse to find a job in the federal government, expanding access to child care for military families. You know, when I first took office, I signed the American Rescue Plan, which invested $17 billion for veterans' health care, including mental health care and suicide prevention, to deal with the fact that more veterans have been and continue to die of suicide than in battle over the past 2 decades. More veterans die of suicide. And all the stories I heard in my home state, people would call up and looking for help. My husband, he needs help. And couldn't get through. Get back to you. 17 a day dying of suicide nationwide. 17 a day. Even one veteran dying of suicide, particularly because he couldn't get the help immediately. There's one too many. The VA is doing everything it can, including expanding mental health screening, increasing access to legal financial support, hiring more mental health professionals, which was one. Where's my commander that was here? One that you brought up. We're hiring more. We're hiring. Including through a proven program that recruits veterans to help other veterans understand what they're going through to get the help they need. I can notice, stop for another second. You know, one of the things about the military, you're taught to be tough, stand alone, do what you need to do. And it's awful hard when you're having problems and you think you have a mental health problem to ask for help. It's really hard. There's no difference between having a mental health problem and breaking your arm or your leg. No difference. And you should not be worried about asking for help any more than you would if you broke your leg. We have to make sure people know there's nothing to be ashamed of in seeking that help. You know, think about this. I don't know how many of my tens of thousands of miles I've traveled through war zones. I don't know anybody who would not wonder whether or not what these veterans have seen would cause post-traumatic stress. It's enormous. It's an enormous problem. They just need help to get through this. We're working to end veterans' homelessness as well. No one should be homeless in this country, especially not those who served it, period. Last year, the VA found permanent housing for over 40,000 veterans and set a goal of permanently housing at least another 38,000 this year. And I'm proposing that the Congress join in and triple the number of rental assistance vouchers for extremely low-income veterans. Now. In securing a bipartisan budget agreement earlier this summer and preventing an economic collapse, we stopped draconian cuts in veteran services. That agreement including dedicated funding for our veterans' health so that the health care of those who serve so bravely in this country won't be used as a bargaining chip going forward to try to get other things cut. The agreement also fully funds the PACT Act and expands nutrition benefits that will now be available to our veterans. After serving this nation, no veteran should go hungry. No veteran should go hungry. Just 2 weeks ago, I signed an executive order to significantly strengthen how the military handles sexual assault. We're moving the authority for addressing sexual assault claims to specialized independent military unit outside the chain of command. That was a long time in coming, but it's a big deal. And we all owe a thanks to Senator Gillibrand in New York for her leadership in this, so she did not give up till she got it done. And there's more to do, but we've made a lot of progress, and we've got to keep going. Let me close with this. After I signed the PACT Act into law last August, I handed the pen as a tradition. When you sign a piece of legislation, particularly a significant piece, you have the people who are responsible for getting it done for you on the stage with you when you sign it. And you traditionally give the pen to the most consequential person who helped that happen. We got finished, and I signed the pen to the widow and daughter of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, a veteran for whom the bill was named. His widow was also my wife's guest at the State of the Union. A family that suffered the greatest of losses, but turned their pain into purpose. I handed the pen, not to the mother, but to Sergeant Robinson's little girl, a lovely little kid sitting next to me. And she looked at me, and she said, "Thank you for my daddy. Thank you for my daddy." I think she was talking for all of us. Everyone who fought so hard came together to keep our promise to the veterans and to keep faith with our heroes. That's courage. That's character. That's who all of you are. Not hyperbole. I want to thank you all, Democrat, Republicans, Independents, for your work to get this bill to my desk and to get it signed. As I said, I was going to sign that bill come hell or high water, no matter how long I had to keep the Congress in. It's just another reminder of what we know to be true. We are the United States of America. There's nothing nothing beyond our capacity when we decide to work together to get it done. We never fail when we do that, never on any major issue. So God bless you all, and let's continue to work together. And God save our veterans. Thank you.